Daniel's gaze lingered on her then, longer than it should have. And in that silence, something unspoken passed between them, an understanding, a pull neither had expected. After that night, their interactions changed. At first, it was subtle. Daniel's eyes would find her in a crowded meeting, a flicker of approval crossing her face when she presented an idea. Once, Daniel brought her coffee in the morning, setting it down with a simple, "You looked like you needed it." Another time, after working late, Daniel insisted on giving her a ride home, their conversation flowing easily in the quiet of the car. Each moment built upon the last, until what had been admiration grew into something undeniable. She felt it in the way her heart raced when Daniel brushed against her arm, in the way she replayed every smile after work. The tension grew so thick it was impossible to ignore. It was in Daniel's office one evening that the first confession broke free. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass wall, and Daniel stood by the window, her silhouette outlined in gold. "I haven't felt this alive in years," she admitted quietly, turning to face her. "And I'm afraid of it." Her breath caught. "Alive, because of me?" Daniel's lips curved into a smile that was both tender and aching. "Yes. Because of you." Her own voice trembled as she whispered, "Then don't be afraid." The next moments unfolded as if time itself had softened for them. Daniel stepped closer, hesitation melting into certainty, and when their hands brushed, the electricity of it was enough to erase all the doubts she'd carried. The kiss, when it came, was gentle, almost cautious, as though they were both terrified of breaking something fragile. From that night forward, they no longer pretended. Their love was a secret, tucked between stolen moments and careful glances, but it was real. It was theirs. And for the first time in her life, she felt chosen, not by duty, not by family, but by love. From the very first meeting, the young graduate found herself stealing glances across the boardroom table. Daniel's voice was steady, clipped, decisive. Her eyes seemed to slice through excuses. Yet beneath that perfection, she thought she caught glimpses of something else, a loneliness she couldn't quite name. She didn't know why her chest ached when she saw Daniel look out the window at the end of a long meeting, expression unreadable. It was during one of those late nights at the office that the walls between them began to fall. Everyone else had gone home, the fluorescent lights humming over empty desks, but she had stayed behind to finish a project. Daniel's heels echoed across the floor as she walked past, pausing when she noticed her still bent over the screen. "You're still here?" Daniel asked, voice smooth but carrying a note of surprise. She straightened quickly, fumbling with her files. "Just wanted to make sure the report is perfect before tomorrow." Daniel tilted her head, studying her, then stepped closer. "Most would have left hours ago. That kind of dedication, it's rare." Heat rose to her cheeks, but before she could answer, Daniel leaned against the desk beside her, her eyes softer than she had ever seen them. What started as a few polite questions about the project turned into something else. For the first time, Daniel spoke not as a CEO, but as a woman. She mentioned her divorce almost casually, how betrayal had taught her to guard her heart. Her words lingered in the empty office, heavy with unspoken pain. The young graduate listened, something inside her breaking open. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the space between them, but she only managed to say softly, "I know what it's like to feel trapped by other people's choices." The house always felt heavy with expectations, like every wall carried the echo of her parents' voices reminding her of the life they had chosen for her. At 25, she had just stepped out of university with a degree that should have promised freedom, but instead it came with chains disguised as tradition. Every conversation at the dinner table seemed to circle back to the same demand: marry your cousin. They spoke of security, of family honor, of keeping ties close. She listened, she nodded, and she went to her room each night suffocating, wondering if anyone would ever ask her what she wanted. She had never wanted men. The very thought of settling into a marriage with her cousin made her chest tighten with dread. What she longed for was her own choice, someone who saw her not as a daughter to be managed or a wife to be assigned, but as a woman with her own desires. She carried that secret like a flame, hidden and burning, and it was this flame that drove her to work harder than anyone else when she landed her first job at a prestigious firm. The company's CEO, Daniel, was a name everyone spoke with equal parts admiration and fear. She was 35, elegant in a way that made people pause when she entered a room, her confidence wrapped around her like an expensive suit. Divorced and alone, Daniel was the kind of woman who carried silence like armor. Every word she spoke was calculated, every glance a measure of power. Employees whispered about her strictness, about her high expectations, but no one could deny the magnetism she exuded. Love bloomed like a secret garden hidden in plain sight. In the office, their gazes carried silent conversations no one else could decipher. A brush of fingers when Daniel handed her a document, a fleeting smile when their eyes met across the boardroom, the faintest lean of Daniel's shoulder when they walked side by side, each moment charged with the risk of discovery, each one sweeter because of it. They stole time where they could. Lunches stretched into whispered confessions over coffee shops tucked into quiet corners of the city. On weekends, Daniel would sometimes drive to the outskirts, where no one knew them, where they could hold hands without fear of recognition. There, in rented cottages or in the privacy of Daniel's home, they could finally exhale, trading the world's watchful eyes for the intimacy of being seen only by each other. For her, it was the first time love didn't feel like an idea or an impossible dream, but something alive, something warm that wrapped around her and made her feel chosen. The taste of Daniel's laughter in the middle of a midnight meal, the way she fell asleep listening to Daniel's heartbeat, the tender way Daniel brushed a strand of hair from her face, these were the pieces of happiness she clung to, each one more intoxicating than the last. But happiness at home was never allowed to last. Her parents' voices grew sharper, their insistence heavier. Every week seemed to bring another lecture, another reminder of the cousin who waited to marry her. He is family, her mother repeated one evening, her eyes gleaming with conviction. You know him. He will take care of you. She wanted to shout that she didn't need taking care of, that she already had someone who filled her heart to bursting. But the words she wanted to speak could never leave her lips. Instead, she said with quiet defiance, I already love someone else. Her father's face darkened, his voice a storm. Who? Who is this man that you think is better than your own blood? She stared down at her hands, refusing to answer. Silence was safer than truth. Word traveled quickly to her cousin, and with it came his bruised pride. Once, he had stood before her with kindness, with the ease of familiarity. Now his eyes burned with resentment. You think you're too good for me, he hissed the next time they crossed paths. Rejecting me for some stranger. You'll regret this. She walked away with her chin high, but inside, her chest ached with the weight of secrets. She wished she could tell him he was not the problem, that men simply could never be her choice. But the truth would only sharpen his anger, and so she buried it deeper. With Daniel, though, there was no need to bury anything. Their life together, though lived in shadows, was made of small joys that felt brighter than anything she had ever known. They cooked meals in Daniel's quiet kitchen, sometimes burning them because they were laughing too hard to follow a recipe. They curled up on the sofa with old records playing, Daniel's hand wrapped securely around hers. There were evenings when Daniel would sit in silence, her head resting on her shoulder, and she would feel the weight of her loneliness lift as though it had never existed. You feel like home, Daniel whispered once in the dark. And you feel like freedom, she whispered back. For both of them, it was a kind of salvation, two lonely souls weaving their lives together in stolen moments, creating a sanctuary in which neither had to hide. But shadows are fragile, and even the happiest secrets carry cracks. It began subtly. A flicker of worry in Daniel's eyes when she kissed her in the doorway, a hesitation before answering the phone when her parents called. One night, after they had spent hours laughing over wine and music, Daniel's laughter faded into quiet, her gaze distant. The announcement came at the end of a staff meeting, almost casually, yet it hit her like a thunderclap. The company had chosen her for an overseas project, a chance to lead negotiations in a foreign branch, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could push her career to heights she had only dreamed of. The room erupted in polite congratulations, colleagues patting her on the shoulder, but all she could think about was Daniel. Later, in Daniel's office, she confessed her excitement tangled with fear. "It's only 1 month," she said, as though trying to convince both of them. "But what if something changes while I'm gone?" Daniel's smile was poised, but her eyes betrayed hesitation. "You deserve this. I would never forgive myself if I held you back." She reached across the desk, fingers brushing against Daniel's hand. "But a month without you feels like forever." Daniel squeezed her hand, her voice quiet. "Then we'll just have to survive forever together." The day of departure arrived too quickly. At the airport, amid the chaos of rolling suitcases and parting voices, they clung to each other. Daniel's perfume lingered on her scarf as she buried her face against her shoulder, reluctant to let go. "Promise me you'll be here when I come back," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel kissed her forehead, a rare tenderness breaking her polished exterior. "Always. Now go and make me proud." She carried those words onto the plane like a talisman, holding them close when the distance began to stretch between them. The first week was manageable. They spoke every night, long video calls filled with laughter, whispered affections, even plans for the future. She would end each day exhausted from meetings, but energized by the sight of Daniel's smile flickering on the screen. But slowly, the rhythm shifted. Daniel's calls grew shorter, her responses delayed. Sometimes she didn't answer at all, sending a quick text hours later, "Busy with work, talk tomorrow." The once effortless conversations became strained, filled with pauses where there used to be laughter. She tried to brush it off as stress. "She's carrying the weight of the company," she told herself, forcing a smile when colleagues noticed her distracted gaze. "She needs space. That's all." But at night, lying alone in her foreign hotel room, the silence pressed against her chest like an ache she couldn't name. Back home, Daniel's nights grew long and empty. The house, once bright with shared laughter, felt cavernous again. She would pour a glass of wine, sit in the dim kitchen, and let her thoughts drift to the woman thousands of miles away. At first, she told herself she was strong enough to endure the loneliness, that love could stretch across oceans. But old fears began to creep in, the same fears that had haunted her after her divorce. What if this, too, ended in abandonment? It was during one of those restless evenings that the cousin appeared, unannounced but perfectly timed. He came under the guise of business, needing Daniel's approval for a joint project the company was considering. He arrived with charm and an easy smile, carrying himself as though he belonged in her world. "Congratulations on choosing her for the foreign assignment," he said smoothly, sipping the coffee Daniel had offered. "She's talented, no doubt. But she's still young, impulsive." Daniel frowned, defensive but curious. "She's more capable than most I've worked with." The cousin's smile never faltered, but his words carried a subtle sting. "Capable, yes. But maturity. Responsibility. I wonder if she truly knows what she wants, or if she's just rebelling against what's expected of her." The remark lingered after he left, worming its way into Daniel's thoughts. She tried to dismiss it, but the seed had been planted. Every unanswered call, every moment of silence from across the ocean seemed to water that seed. In the weeks that followed, the cousin found excuses to return. Sometimes with documents for review, sometimes just to check in. At first, it was harmless, brief conversations, polite exchanges. But then he began to stay longer, sharing stories of the family's worries, painting himself as a man deeply hurt by her rejection. "She humiliated me," he admitted one evening, his voice low and heavy with emotion. But worse, she's humiliating the family. Do you know what people are saying? That she's selfish, immature. That she thinks she's above tradition. Daniel poured him another glass of wine, silent but listening. The cousin leaned closer, his eyes sharp. You're a remarkable woman, Daniel. You deserve someone who respects you, who can stand beside you without dragging scandal into your life. The words cut deeper than Daniel expected. Respect, stability, reputation, these were the very things she had fought to protect after her divorce. And now, with the woman she loved half a world away, slipping through her fingers with every unanswered call, the cousin's voice began to sound less like manipulation, and more like reason. She hated herself for even considering it, but loneliness is a cruel companion. Nights stretched longer, the silence of her phone heavier, and the cousin's presence became a balm she hadn't asked for but couldn't entirely resist. Back across the ocean, she clutched her phone, staring at the last unread message, her chest tight with dread she refused to name. She told herself it was only the distance, only the stress. But somewhere deep down, a whisper warned her, shadows were gathering in the home she thought she had built, shadows that might not wait for her to return. The flight home felt endless, but her heart was light with anticipation. She had counted the days, the hours, replayed in her mind all the ways she would surprise Daniel. In her suitcase, nestled between neatly folded clothes, lay a small gift she had picked out in a foreign marketplace, a delicate silver pendant shaped like a key, a symbol of how Daniel had unlocked her heart. She imagined slipping it around her neck, imagined the tears, the embrace, the warmth of being together again. The moment her plane landed, she could barely wait to collect her bags. Her hands shook as she bought a bouquet of white lilies, Daniel's favorite, and ordered a car straight to her house. She wanted to see her before anything else, before unpacking, before sleeping. This reunion was supposed to be theirs, perfect and private, after weeks of aching distance. The car rolled through familiar streets, and her pulse quickened as Daniel's house came into view. But something was wrong. The driveway was lined with cars, the windows lit brighter than usual, the faint hum of music drifting through the air. Confusion struck first. A party. Daniel hadn't said anything about hosting one. Still smiling with excitement, she climbed out, clutching the lilies close. She pushed open the gate, stepped into the yard, then froze. Through the glass doors, she saw a gathering of people, dressed in their finest. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of celebration. And at the center, illuminated beneath soft chandeliers, stood Daniel. But not the Daniel she had left behind, this Daniel wore white. A gown that shimmered with lace and silk. Her hair swept into a perfect updo, her lips painted, her eyes glistening. A bride. The lilies slipped from her hands, falling soundlessly to the ground. Her breath caught in her throat as the world spun. And then, worse than the gown, worse than the celebration, her eyes shifted to the man standing beside her. Her cousin. Her cousin, dressed in a suit, holding Daniel's hand. Smiling like he had won a war. Her heart stopped, then shattered with a crack so loud it seemed to echo inside her chest. No, the whisper broke from her lips before she realized it, trembling with disbelief. Someone noticed her in the doorway. Murmurs rippled through the room as heads turned. Daniel's smile faltered, her gaze colliding with hers. For a moment, guilt flickered across her face, but she didn't move, didn't step away from the man at her side. The young woman stumbled forward, her voice shaking. What is this? Daniel, what are you doing? Daniel opened her mouth, but no words came at first. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. Sorry. Her laugh was hollow, broken. I was gone for 1 month. 1 month. You promised me forever. The cousin stepped forward, smugness dripping from every word. Forever is a child's word. What she needs is a man who can give her a life of respect, not a scandal. Her gaze snapped to Daniel, desperate, pleading. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you don't love him. Tell me I still mean something. Daniel's eyes glistened, her voice barely audible. You mean everything. But I can't live in hiding anymore. I need stability. A safe life. And I can't have that with you. The words cut sharper than any blade. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of a chair to keep herself from collapsing. A safe life, she whispered. So I was just, what? A phase. A secret you could lock away until someone respectable came along. Daniel's face twisted with pain. Don't say that. You don't understand. I understand enough, she cried, her voice breaking. I gave up everything for you. My family. My freedom. I chose you every single day, and this is what I come back to. The cousin's smirk widened. You thought you could defy everyone for her. That you could humiliate me and walk away untouched. No. In the end, family wins. Tradition wins. You lose. Tears blurred her vision as she turned back to Daniel, still clinging to the last shred of hope. Please, tell me you love me. Tell me I wasn't a fool. Daniel's lips trembled. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room, and in that silence, her answer was clear. She couldn't say it. The final thread snapped. Her chest constricted until it felt like she couldn't breathe. She staggered back, shaking her head. I have nothing left to give. You've taken it all. The lilies still lay at her feet, wilted before they could bloom. She left them there, left everything there, stumbling out of the house with tears streaming down her face, each step heavier than the last. Behind her, music resumed, muffled by the closed door, as if her heartbreak were nothing more than an interruption in a celebration. But inside her, a storm raged, tearing apart everything she thought she knew. She had walked into that house carrying love, carrying hope. She walked out shattered, empty, her world collapsed into pieces too sharp to ever fit together again. And for the first time since she had met Daniel, she had no strength left to fight. The days that followed blurred into one long, sleepless night. She no longer marked time by hours, but by the weight in her chest. Morning meant dragging herself from a bed that felt too big, too cold. Evening meant collapsing back into it, clutching her phone as though Daniel's name might still light the screen. But the silence that hurt the most wasn't from her family. It was from Daniel. Not a single message. Not a single call. Not even a note to explain, to apologize, to say goodbye properly. It was as if Daniel had erased her, neatly folding away the years they had shared like a paper she could throw into the fire. At first, she told herself Daniel was ashamed, too afraid to face her. Then she told herself Daniel was too busy, too consumed by her new life. Eventually, she stopped making excuses and let the truth sink in. Daniel had chosen silence because silence was easier than facing what she had destroyed. The void Daniel left was unbearable, an absence that pressed against her chest until she thought she might shatter all over again. She had been betrayed by the woman she loved and mocked by the family she had sacrificed everything for. Alone in her room, with only her broken heart for company, she wondered if there was any part of her left worth saving. Months had passed, but time had not healed, only dulled the edges of her grief into a quiet ache. She had learned to walk through her days like a ghost, present in body, but hollow in spirit. The world kept moving, meetings, deadlines, family gatherings, yet she moved through it as if behind glass, unreachable. It was on one of those ordinary afternoons, when the city pulsed with its usual rhythm, that fate played its cruel trick. She was walking down a crowded street, when her heart froze. Just ahead, framed in the blur of strangers, was Daniel. She looked different. The elegance was still there, perfect posture, flawless attire, but her eyes told another story. Gone was the spark, the quiet fire that once made her shine. Instead, they were heavy, tired, shadowed with regret. At her side, the cousin walked briskly, his hand possessively on her arm, his face proud in public display. Daniel's smile was there, but it was brittle, stretched too thin. Their eyes met across the street. For a moment, time stilled. Daniel's steps faltered, and in that hesitation lay all the words they had left unsaid. Later that evening, when the city had grown quieter, Daniel came. She stood at the edge of the park where the protagonist often went to sit alone, her figure trembling under the streetlight glow. "I shouldn't have come," Daniel whispered, her voice breaking before she could even begin. "But I couldn't stop myself." The protagonist didn't speak at first, just stared at the woman she had once loved more than life, now standing before her like a stranger wrapped in memories. Daniel's eyes brimmed with tears. "I still love you," she confessed, voice raw. "I never stopped. But I was afraid of scandal, of loneliness, of losing everything I worked so hard to build. I wanted a safe life. I thought he could give me that." She swallowed hard, her body trembling. "But all I've done is lose myself. I live in a house full of walls, and every night I wonder if I chose safety at the cost of my soul." The words cut deep, reopening wounds the protagonist thought had scarred. Part of her wanted to run into Daniel's arms, to believe that love could rewrite betrayal. But the weight of the past pressed heavy. Nights of silence, the cruel twist of the wedding, the mocking laughter of her family, all of it screamed louder than Daniel's tears. She shook her head slowly. "You don't get to say that now," she said, her voice trembling with both pain and strength. "You chose him. You left me alone when I needed you most. Some things, they can't be undone." Daniel's tears spilled, her body folding in on itself, as if the words crushed her. "Please, don't walk away." But the protagonist knew this was the only way to save what little of herself was left. She stood, her own tears blurring the world, and whispered the hardest words she had ever spoken. "Goodbye, Daniel." And then she turned, leaving the woman she had once loved broken under the fading light. Daniel's sobs followed her, a haunting echo she would carry for the rest of her life. Yet with each step away, she felt a fragile strength stirring within her. The pain was still there, but so was something new, the understanding that love, however beautiful, should never cost her dignity, her soul, or her freedom. That night, standing alone beneath the stars, she whispered to herself, "Love broke me, but it also showed me what I can never settle for again."